How does V1 from UltraKill stack up to the many horrors of analog horror? Well, let's dive in and see just how V1 can stack up to a couple horrors from analog horror. For this video, I will include the Sonic tapes and Gemini home entertainment. So let's start to examine and see what this advanced piece of machinery can do against analog horror. This robot here is a lightweight war machine made for combat, a glass cannon with a respectable arsenal to accompany its chaos. To examine V1 and compare it to the many beings, let's look at the gameplay at face value and some of the feats displayed in UltraKill by V1 to get a rough estimate as to what V1 can do. Let's start with V1's durability. V1 is stated to be made of a thin metal plating that allows for the absorption of blood. His durability in the gameplay is kind of all over the place because he can get damaged by these little filth fellows and is also able to survive a hit from the giant corpse of King Minos. So let's just put V1's durability to the upper estimate, where he can actually take a massive punch from a giant no problem. So since V1's speed is also a difficult component to actually measure and calculate because of the lack of actual real solid measurements in game, let's take a look at V1's reaction speed. So for V1's reaction speed, we can see here that V1 is fast enough to react to a bullet and even parry it. This fast reaction speed also allows V1 to dash or dodge incoming bullets or projectiles, which would put his speed at around that level. And since there's no real way to get a good calculation for V1's speed or even something close to it, I'm gonna have to take V1's reaction speed and kind of use that as his actual movement speed, just to have a measure for how fast V1 could be. Now let's move on to something easier to measure, V1's attacks and arsenal. And to make the video a little more interesting, let's lowball V1's weaponry a bit. So for the arsenal, V1 has a powerful revolver and shotgun, a superpowered machine gun that shoots nails, a futuristic railgun with 3 different devastating variants, a rocket launcher that can also be a cannon, and a couple different robotic fists. Oh, and don't forget a saw blade launcher. For the less destructive weaponry, i.e. the revolver, shotgun, nailgun, and saw blade, each of them can blast through stone statues and machines, but when looking at stronger foes like the hideous mass, this more normal ammunition that is launched from these firearms bounces off the armor of the hideous mass. And some of the machines that you have to face in game also have a little bit of armor to them, so they're a bit damage resistant to these weapons. So this will place these armaments to around equal to real life gun bullets, with the saw blade launcher being a bit different and weird because it has a very highly durable and very sharp saw blade that is much better than its real life counterpart by quite a bit. The rocket launcher and its cannon variant, because they display a lot of the same kind of rules as the other firearms, it's safe to say that they are also about the same strength, if not a bit greater than their real-life counterparts. And now on to the X Factor, the rail cannon. With the electric variant, you can rail enemies with a beam that pierces through them and their armor to deliver a highly damaging blast. The screwdriver variant has a drill that sticks to enemies to then start drilling them, making them start to squirt blood that heals V1. Then the malicious variant, which fires an explosive beam that is... V1 has 3 unique arms. One to travel around and zip around using a grappling hook, another to punch, parry, and reflect some projectiles, and the other that creates a powerful shockwave that can knock foes back. So with all the weaponry you would commonly find in game, let's see just how this war machine can fare against analog horror. For this first analog horror of the Sonic tapes, let's focus on just Shin Sonic in order to make the video a little shorter and easier to edit for me. So Shin Sonic, or Shinnick, has 6 forms shown in the videos. The first 2 forms are that of an uncanny malnourished looking Sonic. Stage 1 Shinnick is somewhat unimpressive because he's just malnourished, but he can still run pretty darn fast. Stage 2 has him grown a couple feet to the size of a normal person, and in turn making him just a little bit stronger and more capable than what he was before, now that he's actually eaten something. And as for his 3rd and 4th stage forms, he becomes much larger. 3rd stage form has Shinnick on all 4s, speeding around being feral. This form is about the size of a minivan from what I researched, and it makes Shinnick significantly stronger and a lot more able to do a lot of damage. Now, 4th stage form is just a much larger version of the 3rd stage form, which makes it incredibly strong, and since Shinnick retains speed no matter what form he is, it's incredibly destructive as well. And then we have the infamous 5th stage form Shinnick, which is seen to be a big giant mass that can be almost almost as big as a building, and as I said, even with this size, Shinnok is still able to travel at around the same speed, which is that of Sonic the Hedgehog. So about the speed of sound, if we take the actual literal statement from this song here. And then there's the sixth form. This form seems to be the one after Shinnok is able to achieve his goal, and from some of the sources that I read, it's presumed to be his super form. Since not much is revealed about this form as of the time of me researching this video, I will just kinda leave it out for now. So how many stages of Shinnok can V1 handle? Well, stage 1 and 2 wouldn't be too much trouble for V1. Being a malnourished and weaker version of Sonic with about the same speed doesn't really help him out in this regard. And V1 is about the same speed as the speed of sound, so V1 is able to keep up with them. Maybe not exceed their speed, but definitely rival it a little bit. Now, stage 3 is where things get to be a little bit more interesting. With V1 having the durability to take a punch from this giant thing, stage 3 Shinnok could probably do a little bit of damage, but not that substantial to really be too much of a problem. And since it's pretty large, V1 can just kind of regenerate with a couple blasts to, Shinnok's body using that blood. Stage 4 would start to get into territory where Shinnok could be a really big problem. Having so much more mass and pretty fast speeds, it would make every punch or attack from Shinnok be quite detrimental, and even a bite from him would be incredibly bad for V1. But because of the really crazy regeneration from blood that V1 has, and just the whole crazy arsenal, V1 is still able to win, and also because V1 can keep up with Shinnok, at least mostly. And as for stage 5 Shinnok, V1 would have quite a bit of trouble, because this large mass of Shinnok is actually able to generate enough power to deal some real damage to V1. But since it's also very large, V1 could easily still regenerate, making it so V1 can stay in the fight just long enough to where V1 can actually find a vital point to shoot something like the railgun, so that V1 can actually secure a win. So I will give the win to V1 because V1's a lot more agile than stage 5 Shinnok and would be able to dash out of the way, avoiding all the massive and very powerful attacks from Shinnok. And since V1 is a machine, not many mistakes will be made. Now on to Gemini Home Entertainment. Now I'm doing Gemini Home Entertainment again because in my last video I kind of put it up against the Doomslayer, so to give it a little bit more love, let's just see how we'll do against a much less powerful foe. So let's get through all these creatures real quick to actually get to who would win. Fake people, pretty much just fake people that are husks of normal people, which can't really do very much. Woodcrawler, big scary spider-like being that is about the size of a car and can run about as fast as a car and can also destroy a car and is very stealthy. They are pretty durable, enough to withstand some bullets and explosions, but they will eventually give into a bunch of fire if you shoot at them a bunch. Then we got the Wretch, a big giant corrupted bear that pretty similar to Woodcrawlers, but just a lot bigger and a lot stronger, and a lot more durable. Then we got the Root, which is a parasitic being that pretty much just infects organic matter, mostly people, turns them into a nature's mockery, which is just kind of like a plant-like thing that then assimilates people into itself. And then you got Neptune, which is just a mutated planet from the Iris, which is the main planet that kind of makes all these little creatures. Then we actually have the Iris, a living planet that has pretty advanced and really strong abilities to actually manipulate electronics through technopathy and has some telepathy. And because it's a living planet, it can actually move around, not too fast, but still it can move around space, which, that's a lot of space to cover. So let's get into how V1 would fare against all these. Fake people, V1 would just win incredibly easy. Woodcrawler wouldn't be that much of an issue because they might have some power behind them, but they're not really able to keep up with an agile V1, much less survive the onslaught of V1's arsenal, so they're pretty much just fodder. Then the Root and the Nature's Mockery is just ineffective. I mean, they only really work on organic matter, so they can't really damage or really do anything to V1, so they'll just get blasted apart. The Wretch would be a bit more problematic because of its increased size and durability when compared to a Woodcrawler, but V1 is just way too fast, and it could just speed blitz the Wretch while gunning it down incredibly easily, and if he uses something like the rail cannon, V1's just gonna win. Now on to Neptune. I mean, Neptune doesn't really do anything, but Neptune is just there, and V1's not really known to get rid of planets, which are insanely huge, especially Neptune. Then we have the living planet, the Iris, which is also massive, so V1 would have some trouble destroying, a massive body like the Iris. And with things like the the technopathy and telepathy, the Iris could very well actually damage and maybe even completely incapacitate V1. But even if we say that V1's machinery is just advanced enough to actually resist the technopathy and the machine and electric manipulation that the Iris is capable of, V1 can't really do anything to a planet, okay? Now I could be wrong, maybe V1 is planetary level and can destroy things, but for what I'm seeing from game, you know, taking it at face value, there's not really much V1 can do to damage the planet. At least not in a quick manner. So I'll just call this one a stalemate. Same thing with Neptune. So thanks for watching another analog horror video. Yes, I'm kind of capitalizing on it because it's getting a lot of views, but thank you very much for watching. Remember to subscribe and set all those notifications to all, just see everything I do, and why don't you also like the video while you're here.